Starting any agribusiness is an uphill battle. This week on Farmers Inside Track, microbiologist Morgan Brunt shares 9 steps you should go through before setting up your small farm.
Winter is no longer a stressful time for part-time KwaZulu-Natal cattle farmer Sipho Shibe. Once he introduced his cattle to Voermol Molasses, their condition has taken a turn for the better. Plus, Dr. Francois van der Vyver, the National Technical Manager at Voermol Feeds, adds a few tips for farmers.
The South African Poultry Farmers and Suppliers Association warns up-and-coming farmers against an increase in scammers in the poultry industry. Spokesperson Jay Venter weighs in on how to avoid scammers, especially if you're a new farmer.
Gauteng crop farmer Mapaseka Dlamini knows that farming is no bed of roses. Like many before her, she's learned many tough lessons that could easily have broken her spirit. Yet she reigned victorious, and this week she is crowned as Food for Mzansi and Corteva Agriscience's #Soil Sister.
To mark World Rabies Day on the 28th of September, we connect with Dr. Didi Klaassen, AfriVet's Technical and Marketing Support Executive, who reminds South Africans that the rabies vaccination is compulsory by law.
And on top of our reading list this week is a book titled The New Corner Office, How Successful People Work From Home by Laura van der Kam. And our farmer tip of the week comes from Mpumezo Ndimo, who is the farm manager at Bainsfield Farms in Pietermaritzburg, KwaZulu-Natal.
This is Farmers Inside Track, supported by Food for Mzansi. Inspiration for your business and life. From South Africa's farmers and agripreneurs.
Hey, I'm Mzansi, and welcome to episode 94 of Food for Mzansi's podcast called Farmers Inside Track. I am Dawn Numdu, the editor for audience and engagement at Food for Mzansi. And joining me is my co-host Duncan Masiwa. Now, agriculture is dynamic, and this week we're showcasing its diversity with our jam-packed lineup.
Hey Dawn, and yep, I couldn't agree more. And we'll kick off the show with our colleague Nicole Ludolf, who chats to microbiologist and KwaZulu-Natal farmer Morgan Brunt, who walks us through the 9 easy steps of setting up a small farm using the scales of performance.
Welcome to the podcast, Morgan. Can you tell us a bit about the Scale of Permanence?
Now, if you haven't heard of the Scale of Permanence, this is just a checklist, a mental checklist that you should go through when thinking about land, when thinking about agriculture. And it's a sort of a step-by-step way of understanding exactly where you are. Each site will be unique, each site will have its own context.
Please take us through the mental checklist.
The first point you've got to think about is your climate. More than just the temperature, winds and rainfall, you look at the social economic status of your area. And there's a lot that you can bring into this, but it's specific to your context. So what are your questions you're asking that are climate related, and think about them. Figure these things out, brainstorm, put them down. The second thing you go into is going to be geography. So what exactly does the land say it can do? And when I say, it obviously doesn't speak to you, and it won't speak to you unless you're really observant. Then you may think it's speaking to you because you're able to read it. But what I mean by that is analyze the land shape, the land form, understand its aspects. Where is it facing? North, south, east or west for light. Understand its steepness on a gradient for water, and also how that gradient changes as you move around the contours. The third thing you're going to think about is the water systems. Water moves according to the land and it appears according to the climate. So we've already covered a whole lot about what water is. With water, you look at how it naturally moves around. Where is it going? How is it doing it? Where is it being destructive? Understanding how it's going to cause you trouble is important. And where could it be manipulated? Where would be the best places for storage, the most efficient in terms of the size to volume type of calculations that can be done? And when you start to understand where your water can be stored and furthermore how it moves around your landscape, then we start to look at fourth point, which is going to be access. Because now we understand our climate, our geography, our water, and we know where we can drive. how to move around most efficiently. Because when you have a farm and you're carting tons and tons and tons of stuff around the system, you don't want to be messing around. You want that to be an efficient process. So you look at your access. Where do these roads go? Or in my case, my pathways. How am I going to design my pathways around there for this vegetable garden? The fifth point to consider is going to be your fruits, forestry and livestock. When you've gone through the steps 1, 2, 3, 4, you're now allowed to think about what grows. What do you want to grow? So if you follow the steps, you have a fundamental grasp of what you can put and where it might be. So that's what you start to use now. So the sixth thing we think about is the buildings. This is our post-harvest wash station, put together from a bit of scrap Wendy house that we were donated. And we stripped apart one of the walls here to make some slats so that we could block out the sun. And we have our wash station right behind that. So I told Rob we need something that we can use to wash our vegetables in, and he came up with this system. It was very efficient. So the seventh thing to think about is fencing. Fencing is an expensive process. If you need to put up fences, be prepared to put the bucks out, or you're just gonna struggle. And what we're finding is we really need to put fencing up to be able to expand. So we're trying to grow what we can within the space we already have, using all our resources we have available. And now we're going to go forward with that with the intention of expanding our fencing system. So the eighth thing that you're going to need to think about is your soil. And with that, I suppose, depending on what your soil type is, will be whether or not you need to make compost and how much compost you need to make. But composting is going to be an essential part of probably every system. Number 9, the last thing we think about is the economy. Does this actually make sense? And we start to then put those numbers back into the system and churn that again, having a better understanding of each of the cogs that got you to thinking about the money. Some people think it's the most important part, the business side of it, the finances. But on a farm, it's not really. It's very important to make money because it is a business at the end of the day, and we need to remember that. No matter what your ideology is, if you want to make a success of it, your concept, your ideology, if you want to be that person that changes the world, you need to be a successful farmer first. By that I mean a businessman. You need to make money to be able to survive into that point in time where you can actually change the world.
Thank you so much, Morgan. For a more detailed explanation on how to start a small farm, follow Morgan on his YouTube channel, Morgs Brew. That's MORGSBREW.
Thanks, Nicole, and it's always great having you, Morgan Brandt. Morgan is, of course, a microbiologist and KwaZulu-Natal farmer. Now, from setting up a small farm to animal nutrition with Voermol Feeds, winter is no longer a stressful time for part-time KwaZulu-Natal cattle farmer Sipho Shibe. But his animal's condition took a turn for the better once he introduced his cattle to Voermol Molasses. Dr. Francois van der Vyver, who is the National Technical Manager at Voermol Feeds, adds a few tips for farmers.
Welcome back, Dr. van der Vyver. It's been a while.
Yes, certainly. Thank you, Dawn. It's good to be back.
So this week we're talking cattle nutrition. Winter is no longer a stressful time for part-time KwaZulu-Natal farmer Sipho Shibe. He introduced his cattle to Voermol Molasses and their condition has taken a turn for the better. Dr. van der Vyver, this farmer clearly speaks highly of Voermol's molasses products. Could you tell us a little bit more about this?
So Voermol is a molasses-based feed company, and simply what this means is that we use the byproduct from the sugar industry, namely molasses syrup, as our energy source and our products, while other companies would focus on maybe grains or other energy sources. So this allows Voermol to develop several products to meet the modern-day farmers' needs. Molasses meal, for instance, is purely an energy supplement consisting obviously of molasses syrup and then a roughage sauce. And this product can then be further fortified with proteins and salt, vitamins, minerals to create our well-known licks or our well-known concentrates. And with the addition of something like roughage and some grains and oil cakes, we can also produce complete or total mixed rations for the farmer. And then the whole range of our summer, winter and production licks is also available in block form, which also consists out of the molasses base, as I explained earlier.
Why is the use of molasses meal successful for this farmer specifically?
Well, Dawn, I think as I mentioned earlier already, molasses meal is an energy source. So Mr. Shibe farms under probably some of the most difficult conditions in terms of him not having access to sufficient land or space. So one can assume, therefore, that the veld or grazing on his farm is very limited. In other words, the animals rely on Mr. Shibe to supply them with most of their energy needs, and that is why molasses meal is showing such good results in his case. So molasses meal is a good source of B vitamins and also minerals and energy, but its greatest use is in partially replacing more expensive other energy sources such as grains. In maintenance licks, for instance, all the grain can be substituted or replaced by molasses meal. And then in production licks, which is the licks we use this time of the year, we usually recommend that up to 50% of a grain component of that lick can be replaced by molasses meal. And Mr. Shibe will find as his herd expands, when he does get more land available, he will start following different production goals, and then the choice of product he will use will change according to the nutritional requirements of his animals.
And how would you advise up-and-coming farmers to use supplements on their farm to get the best performance from their animals? I think you've highlighted some of the aspects that this farmer specifically uses, Sipho Shibe.
Yes, so we always advise farmers to use the cheapest, or rather let's put it, the most economical resource to its fullest potential first. So obviously I'm referring to the natural veld or pastural grazing. And then the lick program has the sole purpose of supplementing only the primary deficiency of a veld during that particular season. So we can split the year into 3 major periods, namely the summer period, the winter period, and then the period of the year we are in now, this late winter transition into spring period, which is a high production demand period. And each one of these periods have very specific requirements. So I'll briefly go through them. The first phase then would be the summer licks. So we know in summer, that's when the veld is nice and green, it's very palatable, it's high in protein, highly digestible. So then our primary deficiency would be phosphorus and some of the trace minerals. And therefore, all we need to do is to supplement animals with something like a Rumavite 6P product or our Voermol phosphate block. That would then meet the requirements for animals in summer. Winter period, probably the more difficult period. That's a period when the veld is dormant, so the grass is not growing, it's not palatable, and it's very indigestible. The digestibility is very low. In that period, the primary deficiency is protein, or more specifically nitrogen, for the rumen microorganisms. So therefore, we supplement then a degradable protein or non-protein nitrogen, such as urea, in a winter lick. So typically, we would be using Voermol's Premix 450 to overcome the animals' winter challenges and keep them at the maintenance level. And then the period of the year we are in now, so probably the cows will be pregnant or they might have calved already. The veld is still not good quality because it hasn't really rained yet, and the animals have got a very high production requirement. In this period of the year, then we recommend the farmers to use a production lick, which not only supplies minerals and protein, but also energy. So it's a very high intake lick with a good nutrient value.
And then in conclusion, Dr. van der Vyver, what would you like to send the listeners home with today? What's your take-home message?
Yeah, as always, I would advise for farmers to focus on 2 major areas. The first is to set specific production goals for their herd so that there is constant progression in the business. And then secondly, to feed the animals according to their genetic potential by always supplementing the primary deficiencies during the different seasons of the year.
Thanks again for joining us, Dr. Francois van der Vyver, National Technical Manager at Voermol Feeds.
Voermol produces superior quality molasses-based supplements for ruminants. These products include maintenance, mineral transition, production and energy licks, feedlot concentrates and liquid feeds. For expert advice on animal nutrition for optimal production and profit, contact Voermol Feeds on 032 439 5599 or info@voermol.co.za.
Next up, The South African Poultry Farmers and Suppliers Association warns up-and-coming farmers against an increase in scammers in the poultry industry. They're also concerned about exorbitant feed prices. Spokesperson Jay Venter says, "How can our industry develop if no focus has been given to these small little things that matter?" Jay joins us today on Farmers Inside Track. Jay, maybe you can tell us a bit more about the South African Poultry Farmers and Suppliers Association.
So the organization started formalizing late 2019. We were formalized in 2020. Look, we started off in KwaZulu-Natal as KZN Poultry Farmers and Suppliers Association. But then we found the need to develop the organization with a national footprint, and that's just because obviously we promote the social and economic benefits of poultry farming. You know, with everything going on now, the unemployment, and this and that. So we use the poultry industry to create the opportunities for rural communities. The fastest way to grow is through poultry farming.
And how can farmers avoid scammers? Do you have any practical advice specifically for new farmers?
Like any other industry, the poultry industry is absolutely riddled with scammers. And we see farmers, aspiring farmers, and you know that is what hurts us the most, is the fact that aspiring farmers that do not know better go to the wrong places looking for poultry. And social media is so good, but social media is such a big poison because we see people lose thousands on a daily basis. So our scam awareness project is just to create awareness around scammers in the industry. Then our Circle Cat project, as you saw there. So a lot of farmers for all in our rural communities, and that actually inspired us to develop a program informing and advising people about predator management in the poultry industry for all under your free-range sectors. What people do is people misinterpret killings of birds on farms. They think it's a serval, and we're not just speaking about chickens over here, we're speaking about sheep, goats. The serval is taking tremendous strain. The numbers in the wild has decreased, and that is just due to people seeing them as a threat to the poultry. But if you just manage your system properly and the servals can't get into your cages, then there's no reason to kill it. Because I promise you, in KwaZulu-Natal and in Mpumalanga, it's a big problem. The people are killing the servals because they think that it's them attacking their livestock, them killing their chickens. Look, we're not saying that they're not killing the chickens, they are, but what we are saying is don't kill them. Rather relocate them or rather do something else. But yeah, and then we're currently busy with the launch of the layer project. Basically, just because the broiler industry at this stage is taking a very big knock, I'm sure you know. This is due to avian influenza, and 4 of our major national contributors to the live industry for fertile eggs and for day-old broilers, we've done a calculation, and you know, with the 4 major farms, National Chicks are one of them, Grootsley Hatchery is another one, there's 4 major farms. So with them being out of the game and not able to supply the demand, we are currently facing a shortage of about 1.4 million day-old chicks per week. So that obviously affects so much. And our core business is to stimulate the market using day-old broilers.
And then before we let you go, what type of development do you want to see in the poultry farming industry?
A lot of our raw materials get purchased up by China. What they are saying in that aspect is, how can our industry develop? How can our industry develop if no focus is being given to these small little things that matter? For example, the feed price. I mean, they can really come to the table and just, if you want something to boom, stimulate it. And you're not going to stimulate it by increasing prices. Although, honestly, Nicole, I see the industry from an eagle's eye viewpoint. Okay, so I see it right now. And if South Africa just invests half of the money that they invest in other nonsense in supporting our own poultry infrastructure, we will definitely be able to supply South Africa's own demand for poultry. That is what it's about.
Thanks for joining us, spokesperson of the South African Poultry Farmers and Suppliers Association, Jay Venter. Hope to chat to you again soon.
Thanks, Dawn, and great having you, Jay Venter. I'm sure you'll agree with me that fraudsters and scam artists posing as agricultural suppliers has left many poultry farmers across South Africa disgruntled and hopeless. So thank you so much for that very informative chat. Jay Venter is, of course, from the South African Poultry Farmers and Suppliers Association. Listen, our book of the week is coming up shortly, but first we meet our hashtag soul sister. Gauteng crop farmer Mapaseka Dlamini knows that farming is no bed of roses, And like many before her, she's learned many tough lessons that could have easily broken her spirit. Yet she reigned victorious and is this week's Food for Mzansi and Corteva Agriscience soul sister. Mapaseka, where and how did your farming journey start?
I pursued my passion. The first decision I made was 2012 September. That was just after I wrote my certified theory in accounting. In short, they call it CTA level 2. That's like equivalent of honors, I guess. As an accountant student, and I decided, no, I no longer want a job in an office. I've been to vacation work at Deloitte, and I sort of experienced what auditors are doing. I want something that gives me life. Then I knew it was something related with nature. And I figured, okay, I know that at some point I want to own a farm, but it was not something that I thought would happen now. So I finally, actually that Saturday when I just finished my exams, I watched Living Land on Saturday in the morning, and they were airing, it was the Women in Agriculture 2012 hour. So then there was a lady there called Meflora Mamuchechere. And after that, on Monday, I was still working full time. And I got to the office, I called SABC looking for Living Land's contact details. They took me from pillar to post, SABC Auckland Park, ended up in Cape Town, Centurion, until I found offices. And I think at that time, I don't know if it was Karabo, the host of whoever, she was just about to leave, and they called her and said, there's someone looking for one of the ladies that had been awarded with an agricultural award. And she said, oh yeah, I do have Mayflower's number. And I'm like, yeah, I'm looking to go into farming, I'm looking for a mentor. And maybe she might be a good start. Because I could see her passion, I could see her resilience, I could see, she's had bigger dreams for growing her layer farm, because she was doing eggs at the time. She had 11,000 chickens, and she was saying at the end of the year, around 20,000 chickens.
What are some of the toughest lessons you've learned along the way?
It came June, I felt, no, I can't anymore. I feel like I'm not growing with them anymore. How about from the 21 hectares, we lease few hectares from them? 2 hectares, 3 hectares, whatever you can. But I don't see a problem. I really speak with my husband. That's where now I learned the tricks and the challenges of agribusiness. I went into a Vyver agreement. I knew that we have to send in a signed contract. I let my excitement, I'm an impulsive person, to take over me and not say, no, I want to put a cent in the soil. I even one irrigation pipe, or pay even one person for labor. We had a contractual agreement with these people. So we had a Vyver agreement. Now there's a 2 hectare day. And I said, no, but we need to discuss, because I'll be irrigating. How will the electricity work? And it became a nightmare. We started in August, started buying things with my salary savings. Other months I'll be short. So all these mistakes that I made, unknowingly, how hectic this industry is. There's so many factors that will delay your success, delay your progress, the sustainability of the farm.
Any advice to other women entering the farming arena?
Follow your passion. Farming is your passion, go for it. But go for it with an open mind bent. It's an industry that needs skill. We always undermine the skill required to farm, to manage an agribusiness. The best thing that we think of is funding.
Life in South Africa can be a lot. I mean, scroll through Twitter for a minute and tell me I'm wrong. Thank God for South Africans though, right? We're inspiring, and even on the bad days, we fight back with a smile. That's why I love Food for Mzansi so much. We're not ashamed to celebrate the ordinary unsung heroes who work every day to put food on our nation's tables. Go to foodformzansi.co.za and never miss an inspiring story.
Be sure to read Mapaseka Dlamini's inspirational article on Food for Mzansi's website. Now, to mark World Rabies Day on the 28th of September, we connect with Dr. Didi Klaasen, who is AfriVet's Technical and Marketing Support Executive, as he joins us to remind South Africans that the rabies vaccination is compulsory by law. Dr. Klaasen, could you perhaps start by explaining to us what rabies is and how does it affect animals and humans?
Rabies is a viral disease. It's one of the oldest diseases known to man, and it can affect both animals and people. It originates in animals and then people can be accidentally affected, so that's why we call it a zoonotic disease. And it's a very good example of One Health, where the veterinary sector, the health sector, and the environmental sector needs to work together to make sure that people and animals do not die of this disease.
What are the symptoms and treatment procedure?
So there's no treatment for rabies. The moment an animal or a person starts showing symptoms of rabies, it's inevitable that they will die. Medical facilities and veterinary facilities can try to give palliative treatment to just decrease the suffering of the person, but yeah, it's a horrible disease and no one should die this way. So it's really important that we intervene before it gets to the point of people showing symptoms. The symptoms in animals vary quite a bit. There are different forms. I think the most common idea that people have is that wild animals become tame and tame animals become wild. And this is true to an extent, but we must just keep in mind that there's a furious, so that's the aggressive form that most people are aware of with rabies. But then there's also a dumb form where the animals can appear completely normal and then either lick or scratch or just do these little nip bites that can still expose a person or another animal to the rabies virus. Something that is also inevitable with any animal that starts showing symptoms is that they will die within 10 days. So if you have an animal with a behavioral change and they die shortly afterwards and they were biting people or other animals, you must be really concerned that this might be rabies. But like I said, there are other diseases that can look very similar, like canine distemper virus. Some of the cattle diseases can resemble rabies. So it's always important, if you're unsure or you see an animal with changed behavior or there's something worrying you, contact your state veterinary services that they can confirm whether these symptoms are consistent with rabies and that they can do the necessary tests and then refer you for medical treatment.
How can farmers, farming communities and the public protect themselves against contracting rabies?
I'll always say this, and any person involved with rabies control will reiterate the statement: we need to vaccinate our dogs and cats against rabies. So why we say this is we don't want humans to die. There's a drive in South Africa and globally, we're part of this drive to say that there should be 0 human deaths due to canine rabies by the year 2030. And the only way that we're going to achieve this is if all entities work together. So veterinary services, the Department of Agriculture needs to make vaccine available free of charge for anyone who can and wants to vaccinate their pets, which they are doing. Secondly, the owners need to take their dogs to be vaccinated. It doesn't help that the vaccine is available, but we're not vaccinating our dogs and cats. And then thirdly, if there are exposures, the Department of Health should play their role to make sure that the people get the correct medication and treatment following exposure at the right time. And all of this comes with education as well from the different entities. So firstly, please make sure that your dogs and cats are vaccinated. And then secondly, if you're farming with livestock and you're in an area that's at high risk, so that means you need to know what's going on in your area. If there's been an outbreak and if there are regular outbreaks, that you can speak to your veterinarian to obtain some vaccine to vaccinate your cattle or small stock. That's another option. And then lastly, if you see any suspicious animals or if you're exposed, you need to report those animals and you need to seek medical attention immediately. This is what's going to save your life. We can't wait for symptoms to start showing. As I said, if you start showing symptoms of rabies, you are going to die. So on the day that you get exposed or you are bitten or licked or scratched and you're unsure, but still go seek medical attention and make sure that they know that you've been exposed to a suspect rabid animal. So in summary, vaccinate your dogs and cats, know what's going on in your area. So if there's a need that livestock should be vaccinated, you can arrange that and report any suspect animals and then seek medical attention if you're exposed. That's the only way we can save ourselves and save people in our community. And also just make sure that you know about rabies, what it exactly entails. Attend information sessions and get to know your state vet and your animal health technician in the area. They're the friend that you need to phone. And you can't start making friends in a crisis. You need to have a friend that you can phone in a crisis. a good example is in the past 3 years, we haven't had any reports of rabies in the Nelson Mandela Bay area, and now it is hectic with the amount of positive cases happening. So we need to make sure that we don't have naive populations where rabies can spread rampantly. We can't get complacent just because rabies hasn't been reported in a long time. So make sure that no matter where you live in South Africa, your dogs and cats are vaccinated, and if need be, your livestock as well.
Any advice for new farmers in closing?
For new farmers, every area in South Africa differs. Our country is quite diverse in its climates and its farming industries. So having a farm in the Eastern Cape Province is completely different to having a farm in the Northern Cape Province. And for a new farmer, I always say there's a couple of people you need in your life, and that's going to make your life easier. And a lot of people see them as unnecessary, but I completely disagree. We should work together as a team always. So firstly, most people obtain their medication from a co-op, so know where your co-op is so that you can go buy the necessary medicine and food and additives for your animals. And then secondly is your veterinarian, so state and private. The state veterinarians will be able to assist you with managing control diseases in the area, and your private veterinarians will be able to supply you with medication that the state vets not necessarily will be able to do. And both of them will be able to assist in setting up a herd health program for your farm based on your individual needs. So for example, when should you vaccinate? Should you vaccinate for diseases like rabies, for example? What other non-controlled diseases are important and that could affect your farming industry? They can help you decide when you should dose, if it's necessary to dose, should you dip. And in doing so, you don't necessarily treat and medicate your animals, so you save money, but you also have healthy animals that produce better. So for new farmers, I always say make sure that you know who your friends and your allies are in the area, and that they can help you adapt something specific for your farm that you can farm better. Especially when it comes to controlled diseases. There aren't many, but those that are there can really create or cause havoc in your farming entity, and it's so unnecessary when help is available and mostly free of charge. I just really want to reiterate, today's World Rabies Day. Please go vaccinate your dogs and cats and make the most of this opportunity. If you're looking for information about your state vet, it's available on the National Department of Agriculture's website. They have all the contact details for the various provinces on there, and if you're still unsure, Google is your friend. So just make sure that your dogs and cats are vaccinated. There is no excuse, and no one should die because of rabies.
Thanks, Duncan. And always great having you, Dr. Didi Klaasen, AfriVet's Technical and Marketing Support Executive. I have to say, I'm a little bit of a super fan. Also, if you missed this article about World Rabies Day and ways to ensure your safety, please go and check out Food for Mzansi for more details. Now we're drawing closer to the end of another great episode. But first, our book of the week. Our farmers selected The New Corner Office, How Successful People Work from Home by Lorde Vanderkam. She's known as a time management expert, and her advice is practical. Carolyn Sampson, Head of Strategy and Sustainability at Access Bank SA, reviewed this book for us. Over to you, Carolyn.
In March last year, many of us suddenly started working from home. In my case, the dining room table became our office, complete with a tree outside the window, which serves as the perfect perch for Hadidas to participate in my online meetings. Most companies and individuals were not prepared for this sudden shift. In Lorde Vanderkam's book, The New Corner Office, she shares her considerable experience of working from home with a house full of children. She is known as a time management expert, and her advice is practical. Stop managing by hours, focus on tasks. Schedule tasks based on your energy levels. Use odd bits of time for personal well-being, and think clearly about the purpose of meetings. Use Friday afternoons to plan the coming week and be realistic about your task list. As we transition to a world of more flexible working practices, the New Corner Office is a useful resource to plan our working from home lives.
Agriculture is not just about farming, it's about caring, and that's an ideal worth preserving. It's yummy, it's good for you, and the whole family loves it. It's grain-filled chickens, proudly South African and mouth-wateringly delicious. Discover a world of tasty goodness and visit grainfilledchickens.co.za or like our Facebook page for more. Grain-filled chickens, a proud member of VKB. VKB, for the love of the land.
Sounds like a must read, especially for me, because time management, sometimes I'm not the best person. Remember, if you'd like to review a book or perhaps you have a suggestion, feel free to email info@foodformzansi.co.za. Now, before we let you go, we would like to share our farmer tip of the week that comes from Mpumezo Ndimo, farm manager at Bainsfield Farm in Pietermaritzburg, KwaZulu-Natal.
They should, from the onset on the farming operation, they should always focus on quality. They should try to focus on building a quality product. They should focus more on the brand of what they're producing, because now most farmers or farm managers are struggling with getting the produce in the market, and you find that most of the time that the problem is quality related. So I would very much advise farmers to try and produce the much needed quality, because now you find there's so much food in the market, but the quality of the food is not really nice. So we need farmers that are going to strive to produce quality food instead of chasing quantities. They should try to produce quality food. Then those products that they're producing with that food will in turn help them when it comes to marketing the goods. So it's sort of when you're producing a great quality product, you're sort of helping yourself also with the marketability of the product. And another advice would be, it is very important for farmers to network. That is one of my greatest advices to farmers, that you should network, you should know people that know different things. You won't do this farming thing alone. You need to be very proficient in your networking. You need to know everyone everywhere. You need a guy that is good in soil science, you need a guy that is good in this and that. And that comes through mentorship. You should get mentored to be able to be great at networking and get access to much needed information. You must network. Always find mentorship. Always ask for advice from people. In that way, you are assisting yourself.
And our farmer tip of the week from Mpumezo Ndimo brings us to the end of this week's Farmers Inside Track, proudly brought to you by Food for Mzansi. For daily inspirational stories about the farmers and agriculturalists who go above and beyond to feed South Africa, visit foodformzansi.co.za or simply follow us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram or YouTube. And don't forget, we have farm spaces happening every Monday on Twitter for all the vital information you'll need as a new farmer in Mzansi.
And to our listeners, remember, if you love this podcast, please rate it and share it with your friends, family members, and fellow farmers. The Farmers Inside Track is, of course, available for free on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and Google Podcasts. And, of course, also on foodformzansi.co.za. But from me, Duncan Masiwa, Dawn Numdu, Nicole Ludov, and our producer, Megan van der Vent, and the rest of Team Food for Mzansi, have a great week.
Corteva is in it for farmers, for good. As a company solely focused on agriculture, we understand the impact of climatic and soil diversity, the unique requirements of each region, each farmer, each crop, and the need for sustainability. To this, we apply our global mind. With 5,000 researchers in more than 130 countries, ensuring farmers of advanced seed technology and guarding growing investments through innovative crop protection. Local investment includes research facilities on par with the best in the world and the largest private insectary in Africa. Advanced genetic breeding is combined with intense trials, testing and refinement in different bioclimatic zones to bring forth the best in-class products. Beyond in-seed value, our on-seed applied technology, on-farm crop protection, digital and agronomic solutions are all designed to optimize farmers' productivity, profitability, and sustainability. Because by being wholly devoted to agriculture, we have a deeper understanding of farming, the needs of our farmers, and the country's need for farmers. This is what drives our researchers to find new avenues for sustainable growth. It is the reason for having state-of-the-art seed production technology on home ground. Our motivation for creating effective, locally proven solutions to protect land and crops with care for the future. This is the world of Corteva in South Africa. Growing progress, enriching lives, now and for generations to come. Corteva, keep growing.
You've been listening to the Farmers Inside Track podcast, supported by Food for Mzansi. For more information, find us on www.farmersinsidetrack.co.za.